Hello, 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 and welcome again to another mini episode of the Critters and Cultures podcast. My name is Dr. Azalea Boyd. I am your host and veterinarian, and I'm so excited to be here with my phenomenal guest today. We are doing an off-season series, and so we're doing a mini series. Basically, I get to interview 8 wonderful guests over the next 2 to 3 days, live streaming from Humane Canada's Summit for Animals. And for those of you that are not familiar with Critters and Cultures, it is a podcast where we meet at the intersection of cultural diversity and the human-animal bonds. I am super, super excited to be here with my guests. We are going to break down what Critters and Cultures is all about, honoring cultures, reducing bias, celebrating our uniqueness, and learning about systems and learning through advocacy. So I'm super, super excited to introduce our guests, Sue, Claire, and Garrett from Humane Canada's Promising Practices Project. Now, say that 5 times really fast. Promising Practices Project. I'm going to do a brief introduction and then we'll take it away. Sue is the manager of the project. You can wave for us, Sue, and a survivor of gender-based violence herself, a perspective that deeply informs her work, supporting survivors and exploring the powerful role animals play in safety and healing. And then we have Claire. Claire is one of our research coordinators. She brings a strong background in animal welfare and a passion for making support and care more accessible in underserved communities. And then to my lovely left, we have Garrett, who is also a research coordinator. He uses his expertise in ethics and public policy to advance both human and animal welfare through thoughtful research and advocacy. Together, they are helping to reimagine how compassion, how safety, and connection come together. And I'm honored to have you guys on the show. All right, you guys. So at Critters and Cultures, you guys know we believe in the human-animal bonds, and it's deeply shared by our cultures, our histories, and the systems we navigate, including systems of violence and survival. Okay. Today's conversation for the guest, for the audience, is going to be one that is talking about that bond in its most critical form, how animals can be a source of safety, healing, and hope for survivors of gender-based violence. So Sue, Claire, and Garrett from Humane Canada's Promising Practices Project are doing incredible work to support survivors. And so I'm going to turn the floor over to them and ask you guys to just briefly introduce yourself. We don't have much time on this live, 15 to 20 minutes, but I want the listeners and the audience to really get an idea of the incredible work that you guys are doing and share that with them.
Well, thank you, Dr. Boyd, for having us. I'm Sue. Like you mentioned, I'm the manager of the project, and we're just so excited to be here. We're big fans of your podcast.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for having us. My name is Claire. My pronouns are she, her. And yeah, like you said, I'm a research coordinator on the project, and I'm really excited to talk about what the project means to us.
Yeah.
Well, yes, thank you for having us.
Yeah.
And again, I'm Garrett. So happy to be here. And I can hardly say Promising Practices Project 1 time slow.
Yeah.
So
Right.
let alone 5 times fast.
It's a tough one, right? Okay, so for those who are hearing this for the first time, this tongue twister, what is the Promising Practices Project and what inspired its creation?
Yeah, so I can take that one. So the Promising Practices Project is really about engaging young men and boys as allies toward ending gender-based violence. And the way we want to do that is through engaging men and boys in community-based humane education programming. It's the work we're doing. We aren't offering a humane education ourselves. What we're doing with the project is building a framework that educators across the country can look at, learn from, adapt, and integrate into their communities as they need for what they see as the main challenges and supports that their community may be facing or needing.
So tell me, and this, maybe you know, maybe you don't. If you don't, it's fine. But I do hear the term humane education a lot. What does that mean? What is humane education versus just education?
Yeah, I think
I can take that. Sure. I know. I think it has so many different definitions too. I would say humane education, it's a kind of character education that fosters pro-social behaviors and attitudes in its essence. So We're talking about engaging with people, not necessarily just youth, but grown-ups as well, and fostering behaviors and attitudes like empathy, compassion, and respect. And we're really doing that through looking at our relationships with animals, understanding our relationships with animals and between animals, and drawing those parallels and seeing how we can live well both with animals and with other humans.
Okay.
If that
So,
makes sense.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. So you guys are developing a framework, right? And so then this framework goes out to other educators. Why are young boys and young men, so important in this project?
Yeah. Who would like to take that, Garrett?
Yeah, so of course, when we think about violence prevention work on a community level, everyone has a role. It's really something we need to work together on, and we really see an importance in engaging men and boys specifically, because we do see that on one hand, the vast majority of gender-based violence is perpetrated by men, particularly toward women. We also know it's a small minority of men who are typically responsible for that violence, and there are a lot of men and boys out there who have an interest to be engaged and involved in violence prevention work, and we really want to help have more opportunities for men and boys to come into these spaces to learn and develop the skills to be able to go to their communities and really be allies and advocates in that work toward ending violence and sharing that with their friends and community members.
Yeah, no, I think it's and I know I'm going so off script here. We are aware that I'm going off script here. But I think it's such an important concept. Like, I am a lover of getting to the children, right? And getting to them early and using them to help advocate. I think, so what ages do you start? What does it look like? Give me an example. Like, I have a 15-year-old boy. What does that look like when he gets to learn about gender-based violence? And actually, maybe even before that, the term gender-based violence. What is gender-based violence versus violence that's non-gender based? Like, break that term down.
Yeah.
Want me to take that one? Okay, so such great questions. And so the reason we use the term gender-based violence is because it's this sort of all-encompassing term of violence towards female-identified and non-binary folks. So it really kind of captures like intimate partner violence. It captures, when we're seeing violence towards trans individuals, like it really kind of encompasses all. And so that's why we choose that term in this project, because we really wanted to utilize sort of that umbrella lens.
Okay.
And then when it comes to like specifically speaking to your 15-year-old,
so
how we've designed the framework is we really want communities to come to the framework, and community champions to come to the framework and take what they need. We use a lot of food references in the project, so we think of it as a buffet. Okay. So you're taking what you think your community needs, or what your community is informing you that we need to learn about, that's the action we need to take, and then building a program from that. And so we have all these resources to help you build that program. So we have like a curriculum guide, which helps you take those really big concepts from the framework and make them tangible learning objectives. And then we have age guides that take those sort of learning objectives and make them make sense for like teaching patriarchy to a 5-year-old versus a 15-year-old. Very different, right?
Very different.
And then we have an activity database that actually takes that and makes it that hands-on learning. So you can pick the activity that speaks to your community or get inspired and then design something. Because that's the piece, is we really want folks to work with their communities and know sort of what their communities need, and then take from us those concepts, those ideas, that inspiration, and build their own unique program. So when it comes to teenagers, it may look a little bit more like that social piece, and like having those really engaging discussions with 15-year-olds.
My 15-year-old doesn't want to listen to anything that I say just right now, right?
That's
But what does that look like? So what does it look like for communities to come to you? Like, I always think about victims, survivors, not really coming out and seeking help and seeking support, right? Totally. How do you get people to come to the Promising Practices Project?
So that's a really great question, and I'll take this one again if that's okay, folks. So we have a promotional package to actually help folks kind of figure out how to get their community to engage, because that's kind of step one.
Yeah.
And so it's looking at, maybe it's a survey, maybe it's an interaction, maybe it's actually consulting with youth, and sometimes that's like standing in front of a classroom and listening to a lot of silence, right? And then you'll start to get those answers. But what we found is, like, we have right now, we're piloting the project, and so we have pilot projects across Canada, and we have one, for example, in the Northwest Territories, and because they've designed it very much to represent their community, so how they're engaging is they have elders hosting a restorative justice circle, and so because they've picked members of their community that folks want to listen to, folks want to engage with, that's how they're getting that engagement. So it's kind of knowing who your community champions are, and then you'll get that engagement. But it's also a piece, because you did mention survivors. Sometimes we have to build programs and create awareness of the programs and create sort of trust and safety before folks will reach out for help. And that's kind of that tricky part of, sometimes you may not think, oh, there's survivors in my communities with pets. Well, nobody's calling and saying, we have pets when they call the gender-based violence shelter, but maybe they're not saying that because you're not asking, or because they know that you don't have a program and they're not willing to share, I have a pet and that's why I'm not leaving,
Right.
So,
and I was just going to say, I was going to tie in that pet piece, right? Because a lot of our listeners are in here. We are live at a conference, right? At an animal welfare conference. And so pulling in that animal piece is also important. I am going to share a story that happened. You guys know that I'm an emergency veterinarian. And so last week at the clinic, there was a woman who came in, and her dog was shot. And her dog was in the house with her husband, okay, and was scratching the door to go outside to go to the bathroom. Instead of the man letting the dog out, he didn't feel like getting up. He took his gun and he shot the dog, right? And so she brought the dog to us. The injuries were too bad, so we did have to euthanize the animal. But then my concern was her, right? So do you guys do any work at all with helping, like, veterinarians and those in animal shelters when we see instances like this? It's great to have resources or slide somebody a card if that's the right thing to do. How do we engage, and how do you tie in? I'm asking multi-level questions, because one, I want to know how to engage so that I can provide support to people, but also, how do you tie in this? What's the relationship here with the animal piece?
Yeah.
do you want to talk to Act?
Yeah, I was just thinking that. Yeah, definitely. Thank you for sharing. I think, unfortunately, like, instances of the violence link like that are so common in the animal welfare and in the human social services sector. And that really is the question so often is like, I see it and I don't know what to do about it. So we were really fortunate to have gotten funding from Women and Gender Equality Canada a few years ago, and we worked on a project called the ACT Project. And that one was specifically working to reduce systemic barriers for survivors of gender-based violence with animals, including farmed animals, service animals, companion animals. So we really tried to make it very broad to include any survivor that had a relationship with the animal. And if that relationship would affect their ability to flee violence, we wanted to create a better system of support for them. And so really, like, what a huge part of that work was building awareness, like Sue said, and creating infrastructure so that people can pull from educational resources. For example, we worked with so many incredible partners on that project. We were so lucky, and we had some of them create educational modules on trauma-informed care in animal welfare environments, or trauma-informed care in human welfare environments. And we created all these different resources, different questions you can ask survivors with animals. And I think so much of it is just like that, kind of chipping away at the infrastructure that is such a barrier. And so, yeah, hopefully, like, those, we do know that there are organizations that were able to support survivors for the first time who had animals because of those types of resources. And they're all still on our online learning center. But and they're free.
Nice.
But I would say now, like, what we're really working on is using humane education as a vehicle to foster those pro-social behaviors so that they can interrupt that pattern of violence, so they're not happening, so it's not happening in the first place. And so, yeah, I know it's a multi-layered question. It's a multi-layered answer.
I know, but it makes sense.
Yeah.
And so the animal aspect, right? Is there a connection between what we see, violence against animals, violence against people?
Yes.
Do we see that?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Are we okay if I could take that one? Yeah. Like, I don't want to keep yapping on, but yes, absolutely. We know that in cases of domestic violence or intimate partner violence where there are animals in the home, there are more cases of animal abuse that are documented. And so we know aggressors will often use that human-animal bond between a survivor and their animal to intimidate, control, or further harm the survivor to being silent about their abuse. And so that's such an important link, and even just spreading that awareness about the link and that it exists is so huge. But yeah, absolutely, and we see it in so many different environments. So yeah, it's there. The violence link is there.
Well, that is amazing work that you guys are doing, obviously, and I think just like a lot of other advocacy work, it's getting the message out there, right? Like getting people to be aware. All of that is super important. And again, if you don't know, you won't know where to look, right? And so I'm glad that you guys are on this platform. This is one opportunity, and you guys can put your plugs in and all your things for websites and where people can find more information and where people can find more resources as well, right? So I'd love for you guys to do that. But I do want to know, so what are some promising outcomes or early impacts that you guys have seen from piloting this work?
Yeah. Do you want to talk?
Yeah, sure. So we are in the midst of piloting. So you're getting like brand new information that nobody else has.
First heard on the Critters and Cultures podcast.
So what we're really hearing is how adaptable the framework is and how it's easily able to either weave into a program that already exists and kind of expand it to look more at, instead of just looking at, how do we prevent dog bites? How do we prevent dog bites, but also learn more about animal behavior and then apply that knowledge to our human relationships too.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of where we're seeing that like really exciting promise of the adapting of that, but also the creating of new programs. So we had one group, they were doing conversations in community with male identified folks, and they had these really rich conversations that resulted in the folks who are attending like actually making actions of like what they're going to go do in community to create safety, whether it be like,
I love it,
out at a party or wherever it might be, how they can be those allies. But then we're also hearing, from our humane education folks who are bringing it into schools about how, it's applying to things like bullying and like how do we stand up to bullies and how do we stand up to animal bullies, but also human bullies, like folks that are choosing to bully humans, folks that are choosing to be unkind to animals. And so, I folks feel free to add in examples, but those are the ones that came to mind to me.
Good. I love that. So I have a final question for you. I know we went so off script, so let's get back on script, right? Because I want to make sure the audience listeners are gathering and getting everything that they need from you guys. For organizations or for educators who are listening and want to bring something like this to their own communities, where should they start? And what advice do you guys have for them?
Awesome. Okay. Maybe we'll share this one. I'm just going to do a big shout out to, we have an online learning center for promising practices launching in May. Okay. It's going to have access to the framework. It's going to have access to all these resources, educational modules, an activity database, basically everything you need to either create a program or even just take one thing to bring back to your work.
Yeah.
So that's launching in May at learning.humanecanada.ca pages promising.
We will definitely put it in the show notes.
It's a long
we'll
one.
add it in there.
So, but maybe I'll pass it to you for your final thought.
Yeah. I think, it's such an intimidating, it can be an overwhelming idea of where to even start.
Yeah.
It's a great idea, of course, if you want to engage with the framework, we're so thrilled. Really, what we're going to tell you first to do is to engage with your community. And so,
what does that mean? Sometimes people don't know what that means. Engage with your community.
Yeah, absolutely. We really want people to listen, take a real ear to the ground and talk to the people who are actively working in their communities,
Yeah.
Especially talking to existing community champions. So whether that's a school teacher, maybe you have a daycare educator, you might have other animal welfare people, veterinary professionals for sure, like really whoever in your community you might consider an expert in that area. If you're looking to create a program for your community, you need to ask what your community wants. And then you need to ask your community, well, who's good at engaging these folks in the first place?
Yeah, who do they listen to?
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Yeah.
Like Sue was talking about, who are they already listening to?
Right.
So yeah, I think that's really like the most important place to start, is to kind of assess like what it is that our community needs and who in the community is already doing that work. How can I uplift them? How can I work with them? And then, yeah, hopefully we're really hoping something for everybody in the framework. Yeah. Sorry? Our community of learning. Yeah. Something we have a community of learning meeting quarterly. So we're hoping something for everybody there too. We're having so many incredible speakers, including a speaker from Moose High Campaign, who is going to talk about ending violence against women and gender, just really anyone across the gender spectrum. So yeah, I know, multifaceted answer again, but so many great places to start. I don't know if you have anything to add, Garrett?
I think between the two of you, you've really covered it, but maybe I'll say thank you so much, Dr. Boyd, for having us on the podcast here and amplifying the work that we're doing.
Yeah, very important.
We just want everyone to, find the supports in their communities to be able to express vulnerabilities, have, empathy, respect, compassion, responsibility for themselves and everyone else that they're, sharing the spaces around them with. So, we hope you can find that in your community. We hope, anyone listening can be that person for others in their community. And, vulnerability takes strength, and we can all do it together.
Yeah, I definitely appreciate you guys. I appreciate all those final thoughts and final answers. You guys have given us a lot to go home with. And like I told you before we jumped on the live, I don't know much about this, right? I know that there's absolutely connections to the animal world. I know that I see like that story that I told you that just happened last week, right? And so I will be looking, I will be following, I will be sharing all of that good stuff. And I just appreciate you guys sharing that knowledge and lived experiences with us and why it's so important. So a lot of times, we don't understand the levels of diversity and the levels of what advocacy means. And we maybe forget this area of it, right? And especially in the animal world, right? It's like, how does it connect? Oh, yes, it does connect. So I appreciate you guys giving your insights. And to all the listeners, if you caught this live, wonderful. If you're listening later on and you caught up, please connect with this team. I will be cheering you guys on. If there's any support that I can give you guys, let me know. Thank you guys so much for tuning in to this mini episode of the Critters and Cultures podcast, where every person has a story, every culture has a story, and every creature has a story. Until next time, we will be back live again, live streaming from Summit for Animals, Humane Canada Summit for Animals. We'll be back tomorrow, which is the 28th. From 12:30 to 1:30, and then the 29th from 12:30 to 1:30. So catch us. We have a lot more chats to go. And thank you guys so much.
Thank you for having us.
All right, thanks. Bye. We can wave. We're out. Thanks, guys.